Go.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Football Uncensored podcast once more with myself, Rob Kirton, and of course, John Sitton. Reasonably quick turnaround. We record just for context's sake, Sunday evening as Scotland play and Germany play, and prior to the England-Slovenia game. So, obviously, since our last episode, England have played Denmark. Everyone is very familiar with the result, 1-1. Performance, quite a few people have had their say on social media and official pundits, so we're going to try and talk about that tonight in one episode or two. John, face value, fairly disappointing result and performance. I know I'm giving you a broad brush, but
yeah,
we've got to start somewhere.
I'll be honest, Rob. Yeah, it was one of the busiest days of the year for me so far. So I didn't watch it live. What I've done is I watched the replay when I got home, and then I began to think that I wish I hadn't have done. Because everything really that could have gone wrong did. Everything that was wrong with the performance, it turned out to be the case. I was only going on what I heard briefly on the radio, and when people were getting in the back of the cab, saying that they'd watched it in the pub and etc. You know what I mean? So, but I kept my foot down, so to speak, and I just made the most of it being busy and decided to watch the replay when I got home. But very disappointing, I've got to be honest. From back to front, it was very disappointing.
I suppose it says a fair bit that you were busy in the cab, and hopefully the rest of London's black cabs were other people piling in.
Yeah,
pretty much straight after a result, rather than staying out and having making the rest of the night of it.
Yeah, always reach out to the chaps and said, and the feedback was pretty positive. You know what I mean? So there's no two ways about it. There's still an enthusiasm for the England team, but I just thought from back to front it was a massive letdown, and more or less everything. Well, we only scratched the surface. We've done 2 episodes last week, but we still only scratched the surface in terms of falling away in the second half in the first game against the Serbians, and then Denmark was a follow-on from that. I mean, you can make your point, and you can boss people, and you can maybe get annoyed. You can get angry and give people a little warning or a shout and a look. But I don't think he should be remonstrating and waving his arms about like he does. He's beginning to lose his cool the way Joe Hart was accused of Pickford.
Pickford, aren't you?
Yeah. And so that's from the back. Then I'm looking at no real forward strategy. I mean, it might well have been the case. I've been a victim of it myself. You rehearse. You do stuff in training, then the game time comes and it don't quite go as you planned, and your players or yourself failed to adapt and spot it, or I just thought to myself, let me give you a couple of things, right? Stan Collymore alluded to it on radio actually a couple of days after. I just think we're still at this thing where we haven't really got an identity. I think we're juxtaposed between being England and trying to be some, to paraphrase Stan slightly, build up from the back and look tactically sophisticated like our European counterparts, and we're not. Okay. Having said that, I think you can find an happy medium. And I remember doing a few sessions when I was coming through my badges, and one of which that I distinctly remember was encouraging players. It was a session encouraging players to turn with the ball. Right. So I thought there were plenty of occasions where it was punched in from back to middle third or middle third to front third. And what it was, I remember doing it with a staff coach and going through it with him at the time, Les Reed. He actually done very well out the game at your place. Southampton before that, done really well, which I won't go into.
Not
And
not on this episode.
yeah, it'll probably take a couple of episodes to be honest. Before that, Charlton, the big headlines, who's Leslie? What it was, he was a non-league guy from Wildston, and he worked his way up through the FA. And what it was, we were looking at how good they were, the South Americans, at particularly Brazil and Argentina, with Maradona at the time in his pomp, with regards to changing the complexion of a game, changing the point of attack, changing the tempo of a game with like ball punched in a bump, a quick turn, and all of a sudden everybody's forward facing. Then the next stage is getting support because there's support square of the ball, obviously behind the ball and in front of the ball, and it was about getting support very quickly in advance of the ball, which we failed to do. And I thought, if I'm looking at it midfield, there was slight improvement from Foden. I think Saka's been sussed out, which I'll come to. I don't think he's getting any help, but he's been massively sussed out, almost to the point of impotence. I thought Bellingham is suffering from saviour complex and started to gild the lily, overdo stuff when he should be keeping the game simple and maximising the opportunities with regards to forward passing, A, and B, there's a time and a place to do what he does. He's indulged in a bit of showboating, which is fair enough because inevitably that's like born of innovation. Where he does there's basically a pullback and a clip with the heel of his boot to get someone in. But I thought he took too many touches. That's the point I wanted to make. He's overindulging as a consequence of saviour complex, and at this early age, he needs a massive amount of help. I think he needs help. I'm listening to commentators and pundits jump on the bandwagon with what we said last week, what I warned about in podcasts 18 months ago about Harry Kane after the last championship, about the dearth of talent we're going to have at centre-back, with regards to Stones, this possibly being his last tournament, with regards to Maguire being phased out, he's round about the 30 mark, with regards to struggling at centre-forward, Harry Kane's mobility. Yeah, he got the goal, but he's never going to miss. I don't think I'd miss, or you'd miss from 6 yards, 5 and a bit yards. And he passed it in the corner, which he's expert at doing. We got a bit of luck with a couple of ricochets, but he took it superbly well, kept his cool. Other than that, no one to threaten the back. As soon as Watkins came on, Bellingham started to see and play the ball early because we had someone threatening the back. What that is in football parlance is basically making the runs in behind. Where the frustration comes in with regards to the pundits is when we went off the boil, we gave the ball away. I don't think the pitch helped, but that's no excuse. By comparison, I played on the equivalent of Clacton Beach at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm sure you played on worse.
Yeah. Cut up easy. I don't know what he had on in the first place, Kyle Walker. Whether he had blades on, I'd have had a word before kickoff. As a coach, a manager, advisor, teammate, I don't know really. If you got blades on as a defender, I don't think you should ever wear blades. But if he didn't, then fair enough. It was just a change of footwear, but maybe for a longer stud. So he was falling arse about face at the beginning of the game. But going back to the punditry, you had the thing where they jumped on a bandwagon with regards to Harry Kane's mobility. They scratched the surface of Alexander-Arnold with regards to his long ball game, his long range passing. What I said about one of the reasons why he was selected there. Being able a good kicker of a dead ball. So free kicks and corners maybe, and also being able to hit long raking passes. That's proved to be, as a consequence of not having anyone robbed to threaten the back, an experiment that's possibly gone wrong. Okay, then it brings me to the punditry on, I think it's Shearer who said it. Well, no, it is, because I've been watching him tonight in the build-up to Scotland, and I don't believe that's become a football cliche. If you'd have asked Carver and Clark and McGinn and if there'd have been if they could have been at this stage, paraphrasing again, if they could have been at this stage, one game to go, they're playing hungry, and they need to win to go through to the round of 16 or they'd have took it before the tournament. Well, you wouldn't. what you take before the tournament is if can we do played 3-1-3? If not, can we do played 3-1-2, drawn 1? Not drawn 1 and they desperately need to win the last one. And from what I've seen, as part of their defensive strategy at Hungary, they're breaking the game up in a very professional manner. They just keep stopping the game. So I thought Scotland needed an early goal very quickly, and well, probably 20 minutes plus in as we speak, and all they keep doing is stopping the game with get a lot of professional fouls. But anyway, going back to England, what you said was about the press. We need to press, and what needs to happen is the first man needs to go, and then that will set the rest of the team off, and you've got to go as a pack. Paraphrasing again, but nowhere near where he should be, and I doubt that he would even know how to coach it. I'll be honest with you, because what's got to happen if that's what you're saying, what you need to then do, you need to elaborate on the fact that England had no defensive strategy, okay, and that's the first thing. Probably in equal measure, it's not a new phenomenon. They're going on about Liverpool. They're going on about the press from the front with England. They're going on about the press from the front with someone else the other day. Oh, magnificent! This is, well, ain't a new phenomenon. It's like apps with black cabs. It's not a new phenomenon. Black cabs had apps in the 60s. Radio taxis, Comcab and Dialer Cab. So you've got all these kids coming through. It's just like they've reinvented something. And oh yeah, it's not a new phenomenon. I promise you. Same as I was doing it 29 years ago, because I was a great advocate of it. I was a great believer in it. I was firmly entrenched in it, and I coached every team that I coached to press from the front. And it weren't new to me, because I played against it when I played against Arsenal twice, once at Highbury, once at the Bridge. Got an hammer in at Highbury, drew at the Bridge, and Liverpool at the Bridge, we drew 0-0. Liverpool and Arsenal always did it, and if they got the opportunity, they would press you when they could, at any stage of the game. You could never rest, you could never relax.
Well,
now, going back to what you're saying, Shearer, you've got to know what you can't just have the player go. You can't say that. The first player's got to go and press, and then that will set the rest off, because you've got. And then he's saying you've got to go as a pack, right? The first player has got to determine where the ball's going to go. He's got one of the most important things about defending is to make play predictable. So, what do? As a team, you've got to have a strategy. Okay, so that's part 2. Part 3, what's the strategy? Part 4. In answer to what's the strategy, do we show inside or do we show outside? Do we deflect the ball down the wings, or do we shut the line off and force the ball inside? All right. Then what happens is it shapes where the ball's going to be played. So the second and third and fourth player, fifth player, sixth player, and as it sags off, it becomes, as a centre back or a full back, when to mark a player, when to mark space, which is a session in itself. But if you're doing pressing, right, what you're predominantly doing is encouraging and showing a player out to press, when to press, where to press, which is part of the coaching formula. How, where, when, why. And basically you then go to the second, third, fourth, fifth player, and the players in support of that, supporting the press, okay, and coach them out to take up their positions, so that when a ball's encouraged into a certain area, he then locks on, and then the player behind him is encouraged, he locks on, and then after that, it's about the recovery runs of the first three, first four players after the ball's been set either down the side, you've deflected it wide, or played inside. I never saw none of that. And where Alexander-Arnold's concerned, I don't think he's one of them to do it. Just to stick on the same theme very quickly, Rob, the only players I see with anything about him in terms of the press, he can't do it, Kane, because he ain't got the pace. I saw just before we come on air, What I'm talking about was done to perfection by an Hungarian player when the ball, it was played, and then Billy Gilmore's dropped out and got it. And what he's done, he's been forced to play it back to the goalkeeper because the guy, and this is one of the major keys, he exaggerated his starting position. And when it went back to the goalkeeper, I think it's Gunn, the son of the Brian Gunn, or Bryn Gunn, the Norwich keeper. It
Yep.
went back to him, and then what happened was the second Hungary player, he bent his running. And that's how you exaggerate your starting position. You don't go in like that flat, because a good team at this level, which is a counter argument. So my counter argument to the counter argument, just preempting it, is they'll say, well, good players at this level will play around you, or they'll do a little jink and just dribble past you. Well, then my counter to that counter is, well, no, if we're talking about players at this level, then the same goes for the defending, the quality of the defending and the intelligence of the player. So what he's done, the Hungarian player, he's bent his running, and he's cut off the out ball, because you see he was trying to get it out of his feet, the Scotland goalkeeper, to either roll it back into Billy Gilmore, open his body and play it wide. So what he'd done, he bent his run, and he can't play Gilmore or wide, and he's ended up, well, I don't want to do a drag back to get my own way. So what I'm doing, he's had to play it long, and they lost possession, right? So that's what I mean by that in terms of defensive strategy. And I don't think we've got one. I don't think it's been coached. And if it has been coached, it's been, which again, I've seen massive highs and like brilliant, all that work was worthwhile. And I've seen really low lows where players have let you down, and it don't look as if you're at all organised, and if it's and as if it's never been coached in a million years, which you know it has, and they know it has. But on the day or on the night, they're just like piss poor.
Right. Yeah, it's a strange one, John. You mentioned Stan Collymore earlier, and I looked at something he wrote on Twitter X. I'm going to call it Twitter, and his phrase was "no excuses, no balance, no attacking width, no midfield energy, or players picking up and committing opposition," which I think is something you touched on in the last couple of episodes. He called it a worrying performance. So very, very difficult to disagree with that.
Yeah,
But
I wouldn't disagree with him, because in actual fact, I wish I'd have kept the thing. He DM'd me ages ago when he first went in to do a bit at Southend, and he said, I might well be in contact with you. I get some help. And I swear on my grandson's life, I got a DM. I wish I'd have kept it. You know, because it was nice of him to reach out, although we don't really know each other. But
fair.
well, let me just pick you up on that, because like I went off at a tangent. We're talking about the Hungarian geezer, how well he did, etc. Right? The only people I can look at with the energy in terms of pressing and who will take the initiative, I think Bellingham would be one. I think Jared Bowen would be one. I think Gallagher would be another. Other than that, in the midfield, possibly Foden, because he does it at City, but inevitably, whoever City are playing against, they inevitably shit a brick and give the ball away anyway. You know, if they get put under a little bit of pressure and they go and then misplace a pass, then City pinch it and get bodies around the ball and a massive amount of support. And then they bring it narrow to go wide, none of which we did. Or you go from side to side, none of which we did. But while you're on your way side to side, little ones round the corner to Kane, who's staying high. The reason he's staying high is because he ain't got the legs. There's absolutely no point to the game plan whatsoever. He never had the legs to come deep, get the ball, set it off, and then spin in and help flood the box when the crosses come in. So he's got to stay high, right? Then that brings you to the next thing, what was missing, right? No supply of crosses for Kane. No service for Kane. Okay. Then I'm looking at the next thing. Okay, what can we do to affect the game, affect the marking, to either get a little bit of joy in that? You remember I said about cutting the pitch into 3/3 long ways? Get a little bit of joy in the middle, in that middle tranche, that middle third, long ways, right? What that would mean is Foden getting in off the left, and it would mean Saka getting in off the right the other night. And this is where we seem to have a problem. Iceland twice under Hodgson, Lewington and Neville in the World Cup against Iceland. They played 4-3-3, retreating into 5-4-1. The other week, what do you call it? Friendly against Iceland again, 4-3-3, retreating into 5-4-1. Okay, the other night, a basic 5-4-1. Okay, so what can we do This is what you've got to do as a coach, and you've got to be on the ball when you see the shape set up. Saka's not getting any joy. Foden's not getting any joy. Just say, right, either swap sides, right? So then if they do force you inside, Foden's coming in on his stronger left foot. Saka's coming in on his stronger right foot, although he's two-footed, right? Predominantly a bit of quality with both feet, right? The other thing you can do is, right, get inside and get against the centre-backs, the three centre-backs. So Kane's got the middle one. They've got free marking one. They've got their setup. We did nothing to affect their shape or affect their marking whatsoever, right? That creates a problem straight away, right? The problem being, which you might recognise, if the wide men, which we said, let's start iron wide to keep them pinned back, okay, right? And that might create a bit of space in behind or inside. Well, it didn't, because to affect their back five, you've got to win the battle of the four against the four, and we didn't win the battle against the four, right? But what we can do to help that, we can affect the game by giving them a marking problem. So what happens is the centre back goes, do I really want to be man for man? So the left side is centre back. Do I really want to be man for man with Saka? The right side is centre back. Do I really want to be man for man with either Bellingham or Foden? The answer inevitably is no. So what they'll do, they'll call the fullback in. Then what happens is that's cleared the space for the fullbacks to come and play. You understand? If they get tracked by the two outside of that middle four, there's then a spare man inside. So you get him on the ball, right? Which is what people are calling rotations, which is what I said last week. Rotations are mean absolutely nothing other than getting someone on the ball in plenty of space, right? We never did any of that, and we had no one to threaten the back. So like years ago, you would have even Shearer himself, possibly, most certainly Ian Wright, who I played against, most certainly Gary Lineker. They would do the thing where they'd come short, and as you go tight because someone who's got plenty of time on the ball, so they've threatened the back and shown they get against you. Really, they don't really go behind you, although they walk you back. But what they do, they get against you. They get their body weight into you to just push you off, and then they use you to spring off of and come and get the ball to feet, right? So as they would do that, you would go tight, thinking, oh, he's going to get the ball to feet, and then what they do, they're spinning behind. They come short, and then they're spinning behind. Right, so that ball that you've anticipated they're going to get it short into feet. Well, he can't do that, Kane, because they just pick his run off because he ain't quick enough. All right, and yeah, all right, he's got off the mark. He's got a goal from 5.5 yards, but I still think that I'll be proved right. And we've got a dearth of talent at centre forward who's not really going to cause any problems to any of the other nations.
Yeah, so far you are, John, and like you say, when we said last week, once we get deeper into the tournament and we start playing, well, hopefully, sorry, I'll rephrase that. Hopefully, once we get deeper into the tournament and we start playing the so-called bigger teams, we could get exposed. I mean, one big thing for me, not big thing, but an obvious thing, we duplicated exactly the same game plan, or so it seemed to me, as a comparative layman, as we did against Serbia. The first 5-10 minutes were a little bit nervy, but no real scares. Then we started to get a little bit of the ball. We scored, just like we did against Serbia. And then it just seemed to be instant, right, we've scored. What do we do now? Oh, we'll go and retreat. Last week you said, I mean, you referenced all sorts. You referenced Alexander the Great. You referenced Gladiator. You referenced martial arts, bringing it all into a football analysis. And the time to press your advantage being the overriding theme. But once again, we didn't do it. We just went into our shell and never really recovered again, and put in an even worse abject performance.
I don't think we go into our shell. I just think that's a saying. I don't think any player goes into their shell. I just think they quite possibly they just take their foot off the gas. The tempo, for whatever reason, decreases. We get a goal, and whereas other nations, particularly who I like in the past, who I've really liked, are the Germans. And what I like in this tournament, I like the Germans, the Spanish, the French so far. Not so much the other night, but I think they're maybe missed a guy with a broken nose. Even Portugal to an extent. They even even though I think in the game they I think they went a goal behind, but the possession, the probing was magnificent. I just think we take our foot off the gas, and instead of pressing home the advantage, and being totally ruthless, we let the other team back into it. When
Yeah.
the other team are coming back into it, this is where education comes in. And you've got to do what I've seen tonight. You just, okay, if it's going to be one of them, the Italians wouldn't hesitate. In actual fact, they didn't hesitate. I remember we'd already gone 1-0 up, and I think the centre back, the 6'5" honey monster, came steaming in on Saka, knocked the ball round him. He actually went off the pitch to come back on again. He went that wide in the when we got to the final at our place, and he just went, "Come here," and he took the booking, pulled him back, like just totally cynical.
Yeah,
They
but
call
she
it,
is, I think.
yeah, call it a professional foul. It just broke the game up. So even if we do lose our way, what you got to do, you got to have that little bit of thing, that hybrid that I said. The forensic discipline and tactical nous of the Germans, and the statistical nous of the Germans, the passing and movement of the Spanish, the individual flair of maybe a Portuguese or a French, their laissez-faire attitude where they relax in the right areas, the cynicism of a South American, and the defensive ability of an Italian. You'll think, well, that's a bit of a thing. Well, it ain't. Not if you teach it from a kid, from someone who's a kid. And that's what I wanted at Leyton Orient, where I was basically wasted, and I ruined my chance and ruined my career. But when I look at it now, I think, what's going on? Who's educated these players? Because even if you do lose your way in the game, well, then okay, we're going to make it rough. And what we'll do, we'll spoil the game. We're 1-0 up, we'll spoil the game. Instead of which we're too. It's not cricket, old boy. You know, we're positively too English. We're letting back into it, and all right, you pass your way into it. And now all of a sudden, we've gone from winning 1-0 to hanging on for a 1-1. Right,
Yeah,
and it was absolutely nothing short of abysmal from back to front. From back to front, no. See, to go on about the defending, you've got to realise any good team defends from the front. So all you've got to do is make your mind up what part of the field you want to start from. Right. So like I've said, I've always been an advocate of the high press from when I was coaching 28, 29, 30, 31 years ago in Orient's Academy, 10 months with the youth team, 10 months with the first team, and then the other team that I've coached. And I basically thought to myself, well, I looked at and having played against Liverpool and Arsenal, how difficult they made it for me. And actually, and Palace in a pre-season friendly under Terry Venables. I thought, oh, that's the way to go. You know what I mean? You make your mind up what part. Some teams who are good at it, they concede the ball. They'll defend from the edge of the attacking third, retreating into the middle third. So it's just the back 2/3 they're concerned about. And they do that for one reason and one reason only, because they've got blistering pace up front. They'll try and pull you onto them, and then they'll go into the grass behind. Ergo the French. They've got blistering pace in behind, but we just seem like we lost our way completely because of that. And like I said, Alexander-Arnold, I think that experiment has quite possibly hasn't worked as a consequence of not really having anyone to threaten the back.
well, you say the key word there for me is experiment, because post-match interview, they interviewed one or two players and obviously interviewed Southgate, as a matter of course, being the manager. And again, Nick, your phrase, I'm paraphrasing slightly, but he was asked, I thought, some very direct and good questions by, I don't know who she was, but
Yeah,
the lady interviewed him post-match asked him some pretty direct and good questions, not the usual sort of, oh, how do you feel about the result, but then all that boring guff.
yeah,
And he said something along the lines of, well, we're experimenting with Trent Alexander-Arnold in central midfield and yada yada yada. You're in the middle. Well, not in the middle. You're in the
in a
early days of
tournament,
a tournament, and you're
not yeah,
experimenting.
ain't really the time and place to be experimenting, is it? Yeah,
I would think not. It doesn't, and I'm pretty sure most everyday fans would think not. And yeah, it didn't. To me, it's unfair to make him the scapegoat. I feel, and a lot of people will and have, because of he hasn't played particularly well. and he's been subbed early both games. But as you've said, we've been under par as a collective for both games as well. Unfair to single him out, but I don't know about you, but I don't. I'll be amazed if he starts in. Well, I'll be amazed if he starts in centre midfield on Tuesday, won't you?
And yet I think he's a better all-round player. He's a different
Yeah,
type of player to Jared Bowen, but I think he's a better all-round player than Gallagher.
yeah, he's a great
It,
player.
he's
But
got more to his game, so it's heavily ironic, really. I mean, just very quickly, based on what you're saying there, right? Starting identical to the first game. If you're opposition, national opposition, coming up in the next game or the round of 16 or the round of 8 or the semi-finals, and you're getting a scouting report, is there going to be anything there that's going to alarm you? The answer is no, because the simple reason, I think we're very predictable and we don't know how to mix it up tactically. We don't know how to mix up. You know, I was saying to you earlier about trying a different movement, getting the wide men in off the line to occupy, if they play a back five, to occupy the two outside centre backs, or play between them, between the centre back, to open up the space for a fullback. So then that they've got it's going to stretch. If they play 5-4-1, it's going to stretch the outside or the wide midfield player to go and deal with a fullback. Well, if you do that, you can gang up on the next guy 2v1 in the central area. You understand? And we're not doing any of that. And I'll just miffed by it all. It's just like, get out there, stay out there. We'll try and get the ball here. When we get the ball here, have a little wriggle and see if you can do a little dribbling thing and whip the ball in. All right. Well, if he's involved in you can do that, and inevitably that's part of his it's food and drink. It's part of his reason for being who he is. Harry Kane, he needs to supply crosses, but if he's been involved in the build up, he's going to be struggling to make the box anyway. So I don't get none of it. It's all one big fat contradiction. With regards to the pressing, what the pundits are talking about, okay. How are we going to press? Where are we going to press? When are we going to press? And why are we going to press? Well, you could do it back to front. We should have been pressing because we was losing a foothold in the game. But then with regards to the first three, that should have been rehearsed and shown in training. I'll get this distinct feeling. You see all the things and he's standing there with his hands behind his back and you've got some member of NATO, you know what I mean? It's like a NATO delegation, like 28 staff and the geezers there and they're going in and out poles a yard and a half apart. And then you go, but yeah, okay, next. You could do all that work with a ball. And at the same time, you add into the organisation, the education of the players, which I don't think they have been. To me, it looks very, very stagnant. And I'll be honest with you, Rob. Years ago, they had a chance to get a lot of, including myself, keep on board a lot of out of the box thinking people, a lot of innovative, radical thinking people like myself, but before me. Bigger names than myself, and they passed it up. So really and truly, every time they get shafted, I'll be honest, I'm nonplussed by it because I think, well, they had a good chance to, and then they appoint managers who set the game back 20, 30 years. Because what do you want to do? Do you want to educate the players on winning style, or do you just want to try and win? If you just want to try and win, they're going to play the percentages like they did as a league manager. And even that didn't pan out.
no, I was reading this morning. I mean, you could pick any paper, any online link, anywhere. It's not difficult to find somewhere or someone that's criticising Southgate at the moment. Going back on previous podcasts, even before you and I started doing them, one of your phrases is 10 to 12, 5 to 12, 5 past 12, 10 past 12, etc.
Yeah.
And
Where
to
they're reaching
me,
that peak, that upward peak, and then it's down. It's sort of it goes bump afterwards. After that, it's all the way
to
down
me,
to the
yeah,
bottom of the clock. Yeah,
to me, seems like Southgate is very much in the past of the hour for whatever reason, whether it's his limitations, which
yeah.
looking at the pool of talent we've got, you've got to be thinking, how can he not get a tune out of that, rather than
One of the best, Rob.
he's working with limited players. I
Yeah, but
don't
then
know.
that's down to the people who's educated these players as young players, because The great thing I heard, right? One of the benefits of being an academy coach, which I was, one of the benefits of being a youth team coach, which I was, and then I did Sunday mornings. They didn't know it, but because they have such an appetite for knowledge, right? You can play games with the game, right? So when you're coaching, you can experiment, see what works, what doesn't work. So what I'm saying is, when you've got players going through you like that, okay, and you give them the coaches that got their qualifications of that era, they basically should have been educating the players to an extent where when the next person gets them, he has to do very little. So if you're looking at Southgate's level, he should be having to do, and Steve Holland should be having to do very little. But he was like 15 years behind me, Steve Holland. And then he's doing bits of work at places like Crewe, and then we know he went and kept everyone happy at Chelsea, which is fundamentally what it was. How much work you got to do with Terry, Cavallo, Drogba, little rehearsal, bump, whoever he had there, Lampard. You know what I mean? Probably the greatest goal scoring midfield player of the Premier League era since the inception, right? So you just told, like he said, Mourinho, you listen to me, you'll win the league. Right. So then he set his stall out. I'm going to be coaching you. I'm going to be organising you. But if you listen, you'll win the league. And they did. They won it a couple of times under him, and then a couple of doubles. You understand what I mean? So there's no harm in players buying into it. Right. What I would say with Southgate is he was part of that system with the age groups. And then below that, where I was, a coach educator, possibly. Coaching wannabe coaches. And when you do a set thing, but it's like I said to you, you do a set syllabus, but then you go away. It's like I said to you last week, or like I said, it's like driving. People get a driving license, or a couple of episodes ago, right? They get their qualification. Some of them even get the thing by text so they can pass the theory. They've got someone reading a book outside the examination so they can pass the theory. But the bottom line is they get their driving license. Everybody goes away and drives differently. There's people who are good drivers, like I am and like I was. There's people who a little bit too imaginative. Okay, and there's people who should have never been allowed near a set of ignition keys. Well, it's the same with coaching. You know what I mean? And that's where we're at.
Yeah.
And I just think we're going to, because they never got a grip years ago when they had the opportunity, because they never took people on board. When I was going for it, they employed school teachers. Over me, right? So if we're going to have a pyramid, if we're going to have a pecking order, and I'm supposed to listen to Shearer, and I'm supposed to listen to Ferdinand, and I'm supposed to listen to Waddle, right? Then there should be people who have to listen to me.
Absolutely, John.
In terms of
I'll
the pyramid.
Yeah, absolutely, John. People should listen to you. I'm going to have to cut in there because we're down to our last 20 seconds.
All right.
So I think we're going to try and do another one if providing our tech support is there. So we'll sort of conclude the England-Denmark analysis and lead into a bit of England-Slovenia on Tuesday. So very, very quickly, 5 seconds there. Thank you very much from me. Please tune into this one and the next one. See you soon.
Thank you.
Cheers all. Thank you.
Cheers all.